First meal you ate when you got out of prison?
The first meal I ate was Korean barbecue. Korean
Nice.
barbecue. It was in Rolling Heights, I remember. Paroled out of CRC Norco, and the closest place was Rolling Heights at that time.
Hey, but that was like what you're like, dude, when I get out of here, I'm gonna get Korean barbecue. That's what you're thinking about the whole time?
No, they were like, let's go to all you can eat. And I'm like, oh yeah. And they're like variety of food. And at that time when I got out, it was Hometown Buffet. Do you guys remember Hometown
Yeah.
Buffet? Yeah.
Kind of bad.
They were trying to get me to go to Hometown, but then it was like, no, let's go to Korean barbecue. I actually forgot what it was called, but it was in Rolling Heights.
How delicious was it?
It was amazing. I was eating it, I almost started crying. Seriously, it was bad, man. It was like I couldn't. I was like sad but happy. It was hard to explain.
Once you got free, like what was on the food list? Like what were you eating every day? What were you trying to do?
Okay, so that night I got hungry again and I ate McDonald's. Like I don't know why. Like McDonald's Filet-O-Fish, fire. That spongy bread. Oh yeah, that was good.
What's your McDonald's order?
Usually it's either a Big Mac with fries, like the Big Mac combo, or Filet-O-Fish.
Yeah, how often do you still eat that order?
I don't eat that anymore. I'm trying to be healthy. Dude, last time I had Filet-O-Fish was like 4 years ago.
Hey, low key, the Filet-O-Fish freaks me out because it's like fast food, seafood. What? How
It's
does that
good.
make sense?
The sauce, the tartar sauce, the bun that never rots away. It's
Yeah,
like
nah,
Jesus
man.
bread. Just never, manna that never rots. So good.
So we have a very special episode today. And well, first of all, hit the intro.
Welcome, guys, to the Unlearned Wisdom Podcast by Johnny Chang. We are on episode 2 now, and it is a core of the heart produced podcast. It's gonna dive deep into not just the Bible, but just everyday things that you can apply to your life. It is Unlearned Wisdom.
Nice. And today is a very special episode. Just to quickly introduce ourselves, what's your name?
I'm Aaron. I help with a lot of the social media and technology stuff.
Nice. And my name is Jeremy. I live in Johnny's basement. He lets me out every 24 hours for a little bit of sunlight. But, you know, when I first met you, like everybody knows you from that really incredible Soft White Underbelly interview. But as I've gotten to know you over the years, you became a Christian 8 years before that, right?
Yes.
And so in that 8-year gap, I think that there's, you know, in just talking to you over many, many months, I've learned so much more of really how you got to this point in your life. And I thought that it would be a really interesting episode if I asked you a bunch of questions and you really kind of told the story of how you got to be this Johnny Chang today that everybody sees as a very strong spiritual leader.
Yeah. So the 8 years before started with obviously me getting out of prison, and a lot of people know my story, know my testimony. Went to prison at 12 all the way to 25. And, you know, I had a lot of compounded trauma. I was in California Youth Authority, then went to, prison, level 4 yard, level 3 yards. And yeah, when I got out, my mom, she, convinced me to go to church. And through that, I was able to then move into the church when I met my pastor, which was Pastor Kim. And he preached the gospel to me, freed me from all of the trauma, almost like overnight.
Well, hold up. We're skipping a couple steps here. But first things, before we get into the details, like what are your, for the audience that's new, what's your credentials?
I'm a minister.
Yeah,
Yeah,
nice.
I'm a prison minister, also an international chaplain. So I get to go to prisons, convalescent homes, hospice. And I have my own digital congregation too. So, yeah, and I guess we have to slap the title of like influencer now.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess Christian social
hybrid.
hybrid influencer. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Philanthropist. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. But yeah.
Yeah,
If Jesus was alive today, would he be an influencer? He has so many followers.
Facts.
Yeah.
He would be the influencer.
yeah,
Yeah.
true. So, and for those that are, this is the first time they've tuned in episode 1, Johnny tells a really good story about the first time he really experienced or felt like he saw God or experienced God. But can you give a quick synopsis? What was that first moment that you felt like you were talking to God or you were hearing from God?
When I met my pastor, just how he was able to break down my heart and show me all my blind spots, show me how empty I was, and also how normal it was to be empty. So that was something that I was like, if this man is not from God, I don't know what it is, because he's, like I said in the last episode, he had like the antidote, I felt like, to free me from everything.
And then at that point, you said, how long was it till you moved into the church? And who suggested that first?
About a year after.
Oh, it
and
was a
then the
full
past-
year.
Yeah. I
Okay,
was
so
still,
you were
like-
going to church every week, though?
Yep. I was
Okay.
going to church every week. I was still kind of one foot in, 1 foot out type of thing, because I was still part of the gang. So I was on the process of graduating. Like, I never dropped out, which means like, hey, I denounced the gang or whatever. And that was what was cool about the pastor, was he was like, you don't have to denounce them. And I was like, this is interesting, because everyone I've ever met, even in prison, they were like, you got to denounce your hood, you got to let it all go. But I told my pastor, my cousins, my brother, my uncles, it's a generational thing. Like, we've been in prison, in not just prison, but in this gang for like generations. My gang started in the 60s. And so, yeah, we have like generations in it.
Okay, so you're actively in a gang but going to church once a week. So what are you doing the other 6 days of the week? Like, do you have a job? Like, is it all gang life? Like, what does your life look like at this point?
So the year before that, I was still like selling drugs and stuff. So carrying a gun, I was obviously stacking my money. So I was actually living off of my saved money, if you will. Yeah. And that I wasn't working. I tried to like get a job, obviously having like 2 strikes. It was really hard. I'm a violent offender at this time, still on parole. I mean, I had like homies, make me like checks and stuff like that. But yeah, I didn't have an actual job.
And so at this point, were you removed from making money in the gang? Like, did you have an income, basically?
No, I didn't have an income during that time, because I pretty much wanted to like give my life up to God. So yeah, I just kind of stopped doing all of that stuff. Like, I felt weird. Like, I couldn't preach the gospel and then also be selling drugs. And I touched a lot of white, so like, powder, and I would sell that, and I felt kind of guilty doing all of that.
Wow. Wait, so you go to church on Sunday, and the pastor slowly, I mean, you're like, I want to live a better life. I felt an experience I've never felt before, and you're not working either. So what are you doing with that time? I'm just trying to like get a sense of like.
So we actually had 3 services. We had 2 services, and we had 1 regional service. So it would be technically 3 services. So Wednesday would be our middle of the week service, started at 7:30. I would go there. Fridays were regional services, where we met with people that were like a brother or a deacon or an elder in the church. We'd meet them at their house. And then Sunday was the actual Sunday service. And during those times, when I was at home, which I thought was really cool, was ministers would come to my house, like minister, who's now a pastor, John Choi. He came and he would just fellowship with me. We would read the Bible together, and then he would tell me his stories. He's actually from a rival gang, but he's in Dallas. He's based out of Dallas, Garland, Texas. But our gangs beefed it at that time. And so he would come and he would share the word with me. He would take me out to eat. I mean, we just spent a lot of time together. So it actually made it easier for me to transition into moving into church, because he lived at the parsonage. He lived at church. So,
But what were the reasons that led up to the point where pastor was like, hey, you should move in? Were you like was it like, yo, move in so you could become a minister? Or there was another reason he was like, hey, this is why I think you should?
I would fellowship with pastor once a week. I would meet him once a week, and we'd have our little chats, but we'd have actual set dates of talking to the pastor once a week. And he was essentially mentoring me, stewarding me. He never mentioned anything about ministry. He never mentioned anything about moving into the church until I said, hey, pastor, it's kind of hard because I'm chilling with my homies still. We're going out. And the way that the gang life is, you have to put in work, even if your homies are there and you're not even involved in it. So if somebody, let's say, jumps somebody, you have to participate. Even if you know a person. Like, if I've been to prison, so I know all the people who've been to prison, and there are rival gang members, but there are ops, as they say, are enemies. But in prison, you guys have this unity, because especially in California, it's a race thing. So all the Asians and the others would roll together, And they would literally be prison politics like that. And when they get out, then it becomes street politics, which is kind of stupid. But I would see them, and if there were issues on the streets, I would have to participate. So I remember telling my pastor, like, this is kind of tough because I'm trying to level up, but I'm with my homies and I can't, like, my brother's still active at that time. My youngsters and my cousins and my uncles, they're all active. So I didn't know how to navigate all of that. And I was like, they can't stop being my brother. Like, my brother can't stop being my brother. My cousins can't stop being my cousins, even if I denounce the gang. When we have family meetups, we're all there anyways. So it was very tough. And I went to pastor with that. I was like, Pastor, what do I do? And he was like, Johnny, I think you don't have a person who can manage your life. Like, you can't manage your life very well. He was just honest with me. He's like, I think you should move into the church and learn spiritual life. That's the first time I heard this term, spiritual life. And he's like, because the spirit bleeds into everything else. So spirit will affect your mental, spirit will affect your emotional health, spirit will affect your physical health too. And he kind of used an analogy where he said, even if, let's say, you have a lot of money, but if you're not, and let's say you're even healthy, but you're spiritually like off, you're sensitive to, just negativity and things like that, then that will bleed into everything else, right? So he said spiritual health is it should be top priority, essentially. And so through that, I just kind of took a leap of faith and I was like, all right, let me move in. But there is one thing that I did, and I still, because I had enemies on the streets, for the year after that, while living in church, I was still carrying a gun, and pastor didn't know this.
So, like, was your gang and cousins and family kind of accepting of the fact that you wanted to do this walk with Jesus, or were you feeling pressure from both sides, like the pastor saying, hey, you should come do this, and your gang saying, hey, no, you need to stay and do this? Or how did that go?
After converting to Christianity, of course, the gang had some kind of resistance to it because, first and foremost, most of them were Asian and they're Buddhist. By tradition, Asians, Chinese especially, are Buddhist. So when they heard that I was Christian, they automatically knew, like, okay, this dude is like he sipped the Kool-Aid, basically. He's crazy. They would say things like, why would you worship a white Jesus? And I would fight with them. He's not white, he's Jewish. And they're like, same thing. These are, again, a lot of my uneducated homies out there, right? But they were basically saying that. And at first, there was even like a rumor going around, like Johnny's, like, he's weird now. He's doing drugs. He's talking about how he's righteous. And they would laugh. They would be like, dude, he's righteous. I was there with him doing like the most evil things. Like, he took me under his wing. He took me to do missions. And so there was that pull. And then there was pastor who was like also kind of challenging me. Like, you should really live for the gospel. You should live for spiritual life. God will provide everything. And I'm just like, I need money. I also built this, I guess you could say, career where I gave my whole life to my gang. And I have accolades. I stood 10 toes down. I was solid. I hit the main line, general population, never rolled it up, never PC'd, never snitched. And so there was an internal struggle of like, man, am I going to lose my manhood and pretty much, like, for lack of a better term, like my career?
Your street cred.
My street cred. And so I was very back and forth with these things. And I was like, man, this is tough.
Yeah. You spend your whole life building something, and now you're basically going to start over in a new thing.
Yeah.
So.
He was like the LeBron of the streets.
You guys know I stress the importance of being deep in your word. So we do that every Saturdays at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time in our deep dive Bible class. We go from Genesis to Revelations. We're currently in Leviticus. So all the symbols, all of these unlocks, you guys don't want to miss out. I hope you guys enjoy. It's at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time at coreoftheheart.com every Saturday. And remember, starve the flesh, feed the spirit. See you guys later.
It's very interesting how a pastor was like, you need to learn how to live spiritual life. So moving into the church, how does your schedule change?
So that was early morning we would wake up 4:30, and I remember just like being so angry my first week.
Well, can you describe what the living quarters are like? It's not like you have your own room and a TV and
No, it's cottages. So when pastor told me to move in, they had this crazy schedule. You don't have a place to sleep where it's like your own bed. It's literally a cottage. And it was giving me a little bit of PTSD because I was in YA, which was California Youth Authority, and there's cottages. So it's like dormitories, if you will, right?
just like bunk beds in a room,
Just
an open
beds
room.
in a room. Yeah, think of like the military, and they have a cottage, and you're just like that. You have like a little like, I guess not a dresser, but it's like one of those IKEA like clothing racks, and each one it's very kind of like militant, if anything. And so I lived there, and it was weird. You know, there was like all men, obviously, in the top quarters. And this time we were in Koreatown, so our church had like these little rooms and bunks as well. But I got the cot. So
How many people are sharing the room?
I think in one room it was like 20 people, maybe 15 to 20, if I recall.
How old are these people?
A lot of them are missionaries, so they were around like 20s, mid 20s, I would say, to like late. There was one guy who was like maybe 28, like late 20s, but that was rare.
There was no like crusty old man.
Nah. These are all missionary, short-term, what we call short-term missionaries. Yeah, I knew a guy from Africa, from Uganda. There was a guy from Korea, barely spoke a lick of English. There was some person from Brazil. Like, it was just basically people that we were sending out or were coming to America as like the mission field.
Dude, what? Imagine what they were thinking when he walked in. They're like, "Hey, this is the new guy." Like,
I wasn't as tatted back then though, and I was bald-headed.
I mean, you still don't look friendly.
True, I didn't look. I actually looked more meaner. I wasn't friendly when I walked in because I thought I was gonna get my own spot. But I remember pastor sitting me down and saying, "When you do move in, I want you to understand, like, you know, we definitely break the flesh here." And that's the first time I heard, "Starve the flesh, feed the spirit." So I was like, okay. And he goes, "You know, we're gonna wake up at 4:30 in the morning. Johnny, it's okay. You know, this is gonna be good for you. You don't see it right now, but you're gonna see it later."
What is your flesh saying in that moment where you're like, this is a bad idea?
To be honest, I was never a person who thought deeply. So I was like, it's not that bad. That's what got me in prison. Carrying this gun, it's not that bad. Do a line of coke, it's not that bad. Like, that actually helped me. I'm not gonna lie, because when I got there, I was like, oh man, I don't have a place to stay anymore. Like, it's either this or nothing back on the streets. And of course, I could have went with the homies and stuff, but I just knew. I just had no more like way. It was hard to explain. In my heart, I came to an end of myself, and physically and financially, I came to an end of myself. I was like, you know, it's either this or I'm going to run the streets and probably die. And I don't want that. And I just knew, like, I had no other way. I had literally no other way.
Wow. Okay, so give us the schedule. 4:30 a.m. wake up.
So yeah, as I move into the church, the schedule is kind of hectic. It's 4:30 in the morning, you wake up. We do a prayer meeting at about 5:30. And then we pray for about an hour, and then we do like an actual meeting where we do like a early morning service is what they call it. And then you eat breakfast. And then from there, we split into teams. We go and volunteer, pens. What I would do was, was like, you need to clean, like, and I was just like, dang, this is crazy. This
Johnny
is like
the janitor.
Yeah, this was like prison all over again because, and you know, in prison, like, you don't really have a I was used to clean. I don't have mindset. How clean? So people, but because and I remember kind of you guys.